we can't tell the story of Chris Candido, obviously without you, but also without Balls Mahoney. So
Oh my
straight into
God.
Balls, dude. What's occurring? When did Chris first meet him?
So I could literally take you. I stopped at my parents' house, and the house me and Chris grew up in. They still live here. And Balls's house is 5 blocks north, over the train tracks, another 2 blocks, make a left, and that's Balls's house. So there's like a highway that's like 8 blocks up that way. The beach is this way. If you want to beat the light at that highway, you make a left and you're right at Balls's house. So we would literally pass his house like 10 times a day. But they met in like I don't know, I want to say like 6th grade. And then they both loved wrestling. And then my brother he was already training, and they both started running shows in Spring Lake. My brother would rent the ring from the Monster Factory, or they'd give it to him. And then my brother, Balls, and it's funny because there's pictures of the two of them, and Chris looks like he's 13, and Balls looks exactly the same. He's like, when he's 13, he has like a beard and chest hair, and it's freaking hilarious. And Bam Bam Bigelow's from the area. He's 9 years older than Chris, so he would come. He was already like semi-established at the time, so he'd come to the shows at Marucci Park, and so it was like a little wrestling community around this little area,
Yeah.
So it was cool.
Dude, so
But
actually, I didn't even. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was gonna say I just did an interview with Pro Wrestling Insider the day before yesterday, and I was telling a bunch of funny ball stories. So, and anytime you want to hear some funny ball stories, let me know once we get going, because I got tons of them.
I want to know one in 2 questions time. In fact, one of them actually was. Did Chris do like amateur wrestling? Because I heard that Balls ended up getting thrown out of amateur wrestling because he broke some kid's back. Do you remember that? Do you remember that happening?
Yeah, I heard. I don't think it was quite that. That kind of might have been a little urban legend. He was an amateur wrestler. Yeah, Chris was an amateur wrestler. He was really freaking good. He was in this book. I'm sure it's in the book. But when he was in high school, every year he was in Who's Who of American high school students, because my brother always got straight A's. Was a standout amateur wrestler, and Balls was an amateur wrestler too. And I forget what happened. I think he did get tossed off the wrestling team. I forget for what though. He probably, like he said, he like punched the referee. I forget what the legit story was, but
yeah, I think
there is some truth. There is some truth to that.
Yeah, the story I think he told is he broke some kid's back. Oh, someone told, and he broke some kid's back, and then he carried on trying to wrestle him or fight him or just caused a massive scene, and then he was barred for life or something.
Yeah, he was known for doing shit like that.
Well,
I have some funny stories.
Well, actually, I was the next one I was going to ask was Balls always just like proper ill-tempered? Was he always like had the short fuse going on?
Yeah, I mean, he was so easy to get fired up. Like something as simple as, like, I'd pass his house and I'd stop by. He'd be making barbecue, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, you got to put more lighting fluid in those charcoals." He's like, "They're briquettes." I'm like, "Oh," then I know I'm to mess with him. I'm like, "Dude, those charcoals aren't hot. They're freaking briquettes." And he would just like get mad about everything. He was so easy to fuck with. It was beautiful. So I have so many stories of him just like losing his shit.
Do you remember the focal point story?
Which one?
I believe Balls tells in like a U shoot a few years ago where he's going absolutely crazy, and someone says the words focal point, and that was meant to calm him down. Apparently,
you know what? I don't know. I don't know quite how to explain him. He grew up. He was kind of like spoiled. So he's kind of like a spoiled kid, and if he didn't get his way, he would fucking lose his mind. And that's like with everything. Like I remember, put it like this: he would get out of situations with like police or whatever, just because he'd be like, "What are you talking about?" And he'd like get like up in their face and be like, all right, dude. Like he was just so like just over the top about everything, And he's very easy to fuck with and piss off, it was so much fun,
dude.
So I had
best Balls Mahoney stories, man. I know you've got a ton, but I always like the fight stories.
All right, so let's see, good fight story. There's a couple of them. All right, so one day I go over to Balls' house. His real name's John, so if I say John, it means Balls. So me and him used to always trade shit, like gimmicks, like pills, Fikes, somas, whatever. So I go over his house at like noon one day. I'm like, yo, you got any gimmicks? He's like, yeah, here you go. He gives me like 7-8 Vicodin. Maybe like at noon, my cousin Vinny comes by. He's like, you got any Vikes? I'm like, I don't, but Balls does. So we go over Balls' house. I'm like, John, let me get a couple gimmicks. I don't have any. I'm like, you do so. I just saw him before. He's like, I don't have any. I'm like, all right. I'm like, let me get a cigarette then. He's like, all right, they're in my room. So I go into his room, and then sitting right on his counter is a big bottle of Vicodin. So his house is small. So I pop the bottle. I start dumping him in my hand. Then I hear, and he catches me red-handed. So I throw him in my mouth. And he goes, you steal my medication. Ah, boom. And we both fucking collide. My cousin Vinny's like 130 pounds. So he runs out of the room. So me and Balls are fighting. So he's got a small house. So we're not really getting off punches. We're just like fucking strangling each other and tearing his kitchen apart. Boom, boom. Finally, we fight to the front door. He's like, get out of here. You stole my medication. I'm like, all right, dude, shut the fuck up. I'll give him back to you. He's like, get out of here. You stole my medication. I'm like, bro, the neighbors don't need to fucking hear. He's like, get out of here. You stole my medication. I'm like, motherfucker. So I ran back. I speared him into his couch. He started fighting again. Boom, 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 boom. We're fighting. Wreck the kitchen again. Knock plates all over the place. We fight into his room. And he's got like swords and daggers and shit like hanging on the wall. And I get a little bit of space between us. And I was a boxer. So I'm like, if I want to take it there, I can let my hands go. And our eyes locked for that like 1 second. And he fucking grabbed the samurai sword off the wall and swung it at my head. And I like dipped it. And I'm like, really, bro? You're going to cut my fucking head off? Fuck you. And he's like, no, JC, it's not like that. I'm like, man, fuck that shit. And I walked away. And I got like halfway down the block. And I turned back around. And we fucking hugged it out. But yeah, he swung a sword right on my fucking head. So that was pretty crazy. In the book, it tells a fight story about the arena when it wasn't him. It was like a whole bunch of the guys came out there. Me and my brother and Tammy was there, and a couple of my friends. We were getting ready to leave, and our car was like blocked in by these like biker dudes, and they were like leaning up against our car. And Tammy being Tammy's like, get the fuck off our car, you dirtbags. And the guy's like, you better control your woman. Tammy's like, fuck you. And then my brother had his arm in a sling because he just his bicep just ripped. So he's like, hey man, don't fucking talk to her like that. So they're going back and forth. And then somebody throws a drink in her face. I see my brother go running. He clocks the guy with the one good hand that he has. And then people start putting the boots to my brother. I'm like 15, so there's not much I could do. I fucking run into the locker room. I'm like, yo, the first two people I see is Too Cold Scorpio and Tracy Smothers. And they're like hanging in the hallway. I'm like, dude, Chris and Tam, you're fighting in the parking lot. And they're like, oh, they're always fighting. I'm like, no, like people are like beating the shit out of them. So they come running out. Then I see Tommy Rich, Devon, Sandman, Balls, Big Dick Dudley, Bam Bam, all just come rushing out. First thing I see is the guy that's the main perpetrator. Tommy Rich takes him in a side headlock, and Devon Dudley runs over and just goes boom, 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 just starts smashing this guy's head in. Bam Bam picks some dude up, smashes him against the wall, knocks the shit out of him. Big Dick Dudley, dude, the ECW guys are just smashing dudes left and right. Tracy Smothers doing his little boxing thing, pow, pow, knocking guys out. It was freaking intense. It was awesome. So they definitely cleaned house. And then later, so the cops came. My brother, they brought everybody else back in the building. I was in the car, and like Tracy was outside in like still in his in his gear, and one of like the main perpetrators came walking by, and Tracy just took off after him, knocked him down, started beating the shit out of him again, like in front of the cops. The cops like pulled Tracy off, but that was a massive melee. It was something else.
Dude, did someone get a gun at some point to sort of like scare him off?
At a different time, but not
right.
not at this point. That's a whole other story. Yeah. But yeah, no guns in this point. Like there were some like weapons that made it out into the fight, but there wasn't any guns.
Did you hear that the news got all the way to Vince McMahon?
What about that fight?
Yeah, about that fight, and he cornered Too Cold Scorpio, and instead of like reprimanding him, he almost without actually giving him a slap on the back, saying, "Hey, you're a tough guy. I like it."
Yeah. I think you meant like he was gonna get like in trouble for it, but
yeah.
No, he was one of the first. He was one of the first guys out there. But there were so many fists flying that let's just say the ECW guys definitely won.
Mm.
You know, there wasn't a freaking scratch on any of them.